And there are laws that prevent housing-based discrimination, like the Fair Housing Act. It was instituted right after the civil rights movement, and it became illegal to discriminate rentals and home buyers based on race, religion, country of origin, and sex. But it seems that it's not entirely effective. Certain neighborhoods continue to be redlined. And it seems that businesses, manufacturers, investors in general, they still prefer to invest in predominantly white neighborhoods. Maybe they have better quality infrastructure, better utilities, cleaner air, cleaner water, and so on. And because of that, there remains a gap between neighborhoods that are predominantly white and predominantly non-whites. It is logical to assume that neighborhoods that are predominantly non-whites, maybe their infrastructure wasn't as good and other services wasn't as effective and efficient. And maybe crime was higher, unemployment rate was higher, and maybe people living in white neighborhoods were or still are more skillful. And because of that, businesses and investors preferred or still prefer to invest in predominantly white neighborhoods. And this makes the predominantly white neighborhoods more desirable. And it's a no-brainer. Because of that, they have a higher home values in those predominantly white neighborhoods. And because of that, bankers, mortgage officers, and other bank executives, they, decades ago, literally used a red pen to highlight or to circle neighborhoods that were not so good, that were not so good in terms of infrastructure, services, utilities, or even water and air quality, or the skill base of its residents. They literally mark these neighborhoods with a red pen or red marker. That's how the term redlining came about. And because of that, people living in those neighborhoods, they have a hard time getting loans or mortgages. And if they can get loans or mortgage, they have to pay a higher interest rate. So this can be a manifestation of institutional racism. We know that different dimensions of inequality, whether it's income, education, wealth, race, sex, age, or education, are interconnected. So the concept of redlining, in fact, the other concepts we cover in this chapter, they are all connected to institutional racism. So this can further impoverish people living in redline neighborhoods. A bigger percentage, a bigger chunk out of their paycheck goes to rent and mortgages. So maybe it's harder for them to climb up the ladder of social mobility, to advance in any society if they live in redline neighborhoods. So we saw that the Fair Housing Act was instituted in 1968, and it made it illegal to discriminate based on race, religion, country of origin, and sex. However, it seems that this act could not or still cannot do much about redlining. And it seems that they also cannot do much about segregation. And somewhere in your book, I cannot find it now, it says that even if people of a given race, if they wanted to prevent another group of a different race from moving into their neighborhood, the Fair Housing Act had to agree. They could not do anything. They could not criminalize them. I cannot find this now in the chapter. But it's somewhere in the chapter, I'm sure. And because of redlining, maybe certain groups of people, especially ethnic minorities, they had to pay more for mortgages for rent. And because of that, they also have a higher rates of foreclosure during the 2008 recession. I don't know if you remember this recession. Many people lose their homes, their vehicles, and other properties and valuables during 2008 and 2009. And this was not as severe as the Great Recession, but it was pretty scary. And many adults had to move back to live with their parents. And because of this, they consider the practice of banks in red line areas a form of discrimination, charging higher mortgage rates to certain people. And some of the banks were prosecuted because of redlining. Okay. So there's another concept. We call that the white fight. Okay, if you read the definition, is whites organizing to resist integration. This is what we mean by white fight. Maybe for safety's sake, for other reasons, sometimes for good reasons, who knows. And it seems that the Fair Housing Act could not criminalize white fight. If the whites, they come together to resist integration, the FHA cannot do anything. And there's another concept. We call that the white flight. It's a phenomenon where when there are more and more non-whites and ethnic minorities moving into a neighborhood, whether it's a city, a town, or a rural area, it doesn't matter. The whites are going to leave that neighborhood and move elsewhere. So this is what we mean by white flight. So an acronym related to white flight would be not in my backyard. And it continues to be very political, a very heated and debated issue. And places we see white flight would be many inner cities, Detroit, Michigan, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New York City. And in these places, the whites move to the suburbs for all kinds of reasons, when non-whites and other ethnic minorities move in. Okay. And because of redlining, it gave rise to a phenomenon we call them resource deserts. And these are places that lack basic amenities. So we call them deserts or basic infrastructure. And these amenities can be services, other infrastructure, utilities, emergency services, non-emergency services, electricity, quality of air and water, the type of food stalls they have in those places. And resource deserts often lack access to healthy food or healthy food stores. And resource deserts lack access to healthcare. Sometimes mobile clinics have to frequent those places. And resource deserts do not have open spaces, parks, playgrounds, and places for people to exercise. And transportation was in a bad shape, or is still in a bad shape in many resource deserts. Maybe there are a lot of holes in the roads, water-filled roads, not enough freeways, or bad quality highways and freeways, many holes on the roads, not safe to drive. Inefficient public transportation, not enough bike lanes or no bike lanes at all, or unsafe bike lanes, unsafe sidewalks. And there's no care facilities for children, older adults, or disabled in resource deserts. And I think resource deserts exist partly because of the tax base. Because we know local and state government, they get their revenues or funding partly through property tax, income tax, and other tax revenues. And people living in resource deserts tends to be poor. So they lack all these things, whether it's service, food, green places, transits, or care. So you can read this table on your own. And a last concept I want to talk about would be environmental racism. It's a phenomenon where non-whites or ethnic minorities are exposed to toxins and pollutants more than whites, or more often than whites, due to where they live. Because the median income of ethnic minorities and non-whites tend to be lower than whites. So they tend to live in certain areas or certain neighborhoods. And because of that, they are exposed to all kinds of hazardous materials. And because of that, it can affect their health in years to come, maybe not right away. If they have no way of getting out from that neighborhood, it can take a toll on their health, whether it's physical health, mental health, cognitive health, or other kinds of health. We know that health is a multidimensional concept. And sometimes these places, these hazardous places, people sometimes they don't dispose their agricultural materials or waste properly or toxic waste properly, and they don't throw garbage properly, so they don't smell good, and it affects the air. And maybe people live very close to power plants, which is not healthy. And they live very close to air, sea, and river ports, which is also unhealthy. So, because of that, people living in places characterized by environmental racism, they have a higher risk of premature birth for pregnant moms or stillbirth. They have a higher risk of getting asthma, of getting lead poisoning, because houses tends to be older in those areas, and people in those areas, they don't have resources to renovate those houses, to make the pipes and other things better. So they are at a higher risk of lead poisoning. They are also at a higher risk of getting diabetes, cancer, heart diseases, and other chronic diseases.